Welcome to the Bite Size. This is your tech news TLDR, and we are really thrilled to have you with us today.
Yeah, glad to be here. We've got a really critical deep dive lined up.
We do, and the goal right from the jump today is to cut completely through the noise. We want to deliver the tech news that actually matters to you without the fluff. We are getting straight to the facts.
Right, because the situation we're looking at today is, well, it's moving incredibly fast. It carries massive weight, and honestly, it demands immediate attention from anyone managing a network.
Exactly. The pace of the current threat landscape means that, hesitation is basically a vulnerability in itself.
It really is. We have to dissect what's happening technically, understand the mechanics, and figure out the operational impact for enterprise environments.
Because the intelligence we are reviewing today, it details a profound structural shift in offensive cyber capabilities.
It does. It's a huge shift.
So let's hit the bottom line teaser right now. The mission today is tracking the evolution of a top-tier cyber weapon. We are talking about a highly sophisticated exploit originally engineered by state-sponsored intelligence operatives.
Right, spies, nation-state actors.
Spies, exactly. But it doesn't stay in the shadows. We are going to unpack how this exact elite capability trickled all the way down into the hands of financially motivated cyber criminals.
And that transition from the realm of highly targeted espionage into the chaotic, high-volume world of everyday cybercrime, that is the pivotal issue here.
It changes everything for the average defender, right?
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
fundamentally alters the risk profile for standard businesses that previously thought, we're too small to be targeted by nation-state tools.
They thought they were flying under the radar, so let's define the target. The core subject today is a critical vulnerability inside VMware's ESXi.
ESXi, yeah. If you work in IT, that name is just part of your daily vocabulary.
It really is. I mean, this isn't some niche application running on a rogue desktop somewhere in the marketing department. This is the hypervisor layer.
The hypervisor, it runs the virtual servers for a massive percentage of the global Fortune 500 down to mid-sized businesses.
It is the literal foundation of modern corporate infrastructure.
It acts as the digital bedrock. When we discuss virtual environments, ESXi is the architecture dictating how businesses scale, how they process transactions, how they house their most sensitive databases.
Right, and because of its sheer ubiquity, a vulnerability targeting this specific hypervisor it's basically a structural fault line running directly beneath the global economy.
That's the perfect way to phrase it, a fault line.
Which brings us to the immediate real-world impact for you, the professional listening right now. This is not a white paper theory.
No, not at all.
This isn't a proof of concept waiting to happen. This is a clear present danger today. Ransomware gangs are actively weaponizing this flaw to compromise corporate data and halt productivity.
The velocity of the threat is what really stands out to me. We're dealing with a live weapon in active deployment right now.
And if a ransomware affiliate leverages this to hold your infrastructure hostage, operations don't just slow down.
They cease. They completely stop. The hypervisor controls the underlying hardware, meaning an attack at this level compromises everything sitting above it.
Everything. So let's break down the mechanics of the immediate threat. The intelligence refers to this as a virtual prison break.
A prison break. It's an intense term, but it's accurate.
And to underline the severity of that break, CISA just added this to their known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, the KE list. That is a blaring siren for anyone running a cyber C or managing IT risks.
Oh, absolutely. The KEV catalog is the ultimate authoritative directive in the cybersecurity space.
It's the big leagues.
Right. When an exploit makes that list, the theoretical risk assessment phase is entirely over. Federal agencies are mandated to patch within strict timeframes, and the private sector treats it as an emergency benchmark.
Because it means it's real.
Exactly. It means telemetry confirms threat actors are actively scanning for and successfully compromising systems using this exact vector.
So how does the exploit actually function? To visualize this, let's use the concept of an apartment building. I think that's the best way to picture it. In this scenario, the individual virtual machine, the VM, is a secure, isolated apartment.
Right. And the hypervisor, the ESXi server itself, is the massive apartment building containing hundreds of these individual units.
Hundreds of isolated apartments.
Yes. The entire concept of cloud computing and virtualization relies heavily on tenant isolation. The data, The memory space, the processing power allocated to apartment A must be mathematically and logically walled off from apartment B.
But a VM escape shatters that wall.
It shatters it completely.
It's the digital equivalent of a tenant finding a flaw in their wall, breaking out of their locked apartment, and not just wandering the hallway, but finding the master control room for the entire building.
Yes, boiler room, the electrical grid, everything.
Right. They seize control of the electricity, the water, the security cameras. They have the master keys to every unit.
The analogy holds up perfectly here. In technical terms, the attacker breaks out of the unprivileged guest operating system and executes code on the host hypervisor.
And once they breach that host layer,
The isolation model evaporates. The attacker now has omnipotent access to every single virtual machine running on that physical server.
so they can see everything.
Everything. They can read the memory of neighboring VMs, extract encryption keys, modify data, or just shut the entire environment down.
That's terrifying, and the intelligence breaks down exactly how they picked that lock. It isn't a single missing line of code, right? It's a highly complex 1-2-3 punch.
Right, 3 distinct vulnerabilities chained together in perfect sequence.
Chaining vulnerabilities is an incredibly difficult engineering feat, isn't it?
Oh, it's a massive feat. Most isolated software bugs will just crash the system if exploited improperly. To string 3 together without crashing the server requires deep, intrinsic knowledge of the hypervisor's memory management and CPU scheduling.
So let's walk through that chain. Step 1 is the aim. The first vulnerability is an information leak. It doesn't execute anything, it just acts as reconnaissance to help the attacker line up the shot.
Reconnaissance, exactly.
Why is that initial look so critical?
Well, modern operating systems use security mitigations like address space layout randomization, ASLR.
Yay, ASLR.
Every time a system boots, it scrambles the location of key functions in the computer's memory. So if an attacker tries to guess where a critical function is and guesses wrong,
The system crashes.
the system throws an exception and crashes, alerting the defense immediately. This first vulnerability leaks the exact memory addresses, effectively handing the attacker a blueprint of the randomized environment.
Wow.
Yeah, they know exactly where to point their weapons without making a single sound.
So they have the map. That takes us to step 2, the critical breach. This is where the attacker manages to execute their own malicious code. But wait, if they are still inside their virtual apartment, how dangerous is this arbitrary code execution at this specific stage?
Well, at this phase, they have compromised a process running on the guest VM, but they haven't broken the walls yet.
Okay, so they're still in the apartment.
Right. They have essentially smuggled their tools into the apartment and laid them out on the table. They're manipulating the local environment, staging their shellcode in memory, and prepping the final assault on the hypervisor boundary.
Getting ready to break through the drywall.
Exactly. They are powerful within their own confined space, but they don't have the building keys yet.
Which sets up step 3, the kernel takeover. This is the knockout blow. They use the third vulnerability to completely escape the sandbox and seize control of the server's core, the kernel. What happens the millisecond they hit the kernel?
The kernel is the absolute authority on the physical machine. It operates in what we call ring 0, the highest privilege level,
Yeah.
whereas user applications operate down in ring 3,
Ring 0 is God mode.
total God mode. By forcing the hypervisor kernel to execute their payload, the attackers transition from being a restricted tenant to the ultimate administrator. They dictate what the hardware does.
They own the CPU, the RAM, the network interfaces.
All of it. The 1, 2, 3 punch mapping the memory, staging the code, and escalating to ring 0 is a devastatingly effective exploit chain.
It's just terrifying to think about the precision required for that. Which leads us to the discovery phase. How do you even catch an attack that operates at that foundational level?
It's not easy, I'll tell you that.
The investigation by the security firm Huntress sounds like parsing through digital ghost stories.
It really does. Hunting an adversary operating at the kernel level of a hypervisor is notoriously difficult. Standard endpoint detection and response tools EDRs typically run inside the guest operating systems.
Inside the apartments.
Inside the apartments. If the hypervisor underneath the EDR is compromised, the hypervisor can simply lie to the security tools, telling them everything is normal.
Because the building manager is corrupt and telling the tenant's security camera to just loop old footage.
That's exactly it. The security tool asks the kernel what's happening, and the compromised kernel says, nothing to see here.
So Huntress gets called in for what looks like a routine breach, but they quickly realize nothing about the telemetry is standard. The attackers were deploying tools that the industry had never seen in the wild.
Anomalies at this level are incredibly subtle. Incident responders aren't looking for glaring alerts. They are looking for minute discrepancies in process execution times, unexpected network sockets opening in strange namespaces, or tiny fragments of unusual code injected into standard administrative processes.
Tiny breadcrumbs.
Very tiny. And when seasoned analysts realize they are staring at entirely novel techniques, the investigation shifts from a routine cleanup to a massive threat hunting operation.
This brings us to the zero-day reality. The intelligence confirms this was a zero-day exploit, meaning it was deployed in secret before VMware even knew the flaw existed.
Right.
Let's look at the timeline. The evidence shows this weapon was being actively used in secret as early as February 2024.
That timestamp is the most alarming data point in the entire report for me. February 2024 establishes the beginning of the exposure window.
That's huge.
It is.
Yeah.
From that moment, an elite threat actor possessed the capability to silently compromise ESXi servers globally, while the defenders had absolutely no idea the vulnerability even existed.
And VMware didn't issue a patch until over a year later, over 12 months. What is an advanced threat actor actually doing with a full year of unmitigated invisible access inside a target's core infrastructure?
A 12-month dwell time is a catastrophic scenario for an enterprise. They aren't just sitting idle, they are mapping the entire internal network.
They're doing inventory.
Yes. They are compromising backup servers to ensure the victim cannot recover. They are quietly exfiltrating terabytes of sensitive intellectual property, source code, and strategic communications.
Just vacuuming it all up over a year.
And embedding deep persistence mechanisms. They are creating shadow administrator accounts, modifying firmware, and planting backdoors that will survive even if the original vulnerability is eventually patched.
Because once you're in for a year, you build a lot of backdoors.
Dozens of them. During that entire year, IT teams believed they were secure. They were passing compliance audits and running their daily operations, completely unaware that their foundation was fundamentally compromised.
It's like finding out your bank vault had a tunnel dug into it a year ago and the thieves have just been casually walking in and out every night.
It's exactly like that.
Let's pivot to the architects then. Who built this skeleton key? The investigation points heavily toward a nation-state operation, specifically based on digital fingerprints left behind.
Attribution in cyberspace is a complex science, but threat actors inevitably leave artifacts.
They always leave something.
Always. The compilation process, the development environments, the metadata, it all tells a story about the engineering team behind the malware.
The intelligence highlights simplified Chinese strings and distinct development paths hard-coded into the weapon. But I have to ask, couldn't a smart attacker just plant foreign language strings in their code as a false flag to throw investigators off the scent?
False flags are certainly a tactic. And intelligence analysts always account for that possibility. You can't just look at a few strings and call it a day.
Right.
However, you have to look at the holistic picture. It isn't just a few random strings. It's the structure of the file paths, the specific compiler versions used, the time zones of the compilation timestamps, and the operational rhythm of the attacks.
So it's the whole profile.
Exactly. When all those discrete data points align with the known behaviors of advanced persistent threat groups from a specific region, the confidence level in the attribution rises significantly.
But the real clincher seems to be the scale of the engineering. The report contrasts this with small-time cybercrime. To pull off a 3-chain VM escape is one thing, but the intelligence reveals this weapon was designed to successfully exploit 155 different builds of VMware ESXi.
That specific number 155 builds changes the entire context of the operation.
It's a massive number.
It is. Software is constantly being patched, updated, and modified. Every minor update to ESXi shifts the memory layout slightly. An exploit built for version 7.0 might completely crash version 7.1.
So to make it work across 155 different versions, they couldn't just write the code once.
Correct. They had to acquire, install, and reverse engineer 155 distinct iterations of the hypervisor.
That sounds insanely expensive.
It is. They had to map the memory offsets for every single build and hard-code those offsets into the exploit payload. That requires an industrial-scale QA testing environment.
For like a whole warehouse of servers just to test the exploit.
Literally. It requires dedicated teams of vulnerability researchers working for months. A financially motivated ransomware gang simply does not invest millions of dollars in research and development just to build an exploit.
They want a quick return on investment.
Exactly. That level of meticulous, exhaustive engineering is the exclusive domain of a well-funded nation-state intelligence apparatus.
They built a weapon that could be pointed indiscriminately at almost any infrastructure on the planet. Let's look at the actual tools they drop once they blow the doors open. The intelligence details two specific components, the MAESTRO orchestrator and the VSOCKpuppet backdoor. Let's start with MAESTRO.
The term orchestrator is highly accurate here. A complex exploit chain cannot be executed manually.
That's too fast, right?
Much too fast. The timing between the memory leak, the code execution, and the kernel escalation requires microsecond precision. MAESTRO is the conductor, automating the entire sequence to ensure stability.
And the checklist it runs through is ruthless. It disables the existing security, loads the exploit, triggers the chain to escape the VM, drops the backdoor, and then immediately cleans up its own tracks.
Yeah.
How does a program vacuum the crime scene without looking like someone just wiped a hard drive?
That's the difference between a blunt instrument and a surgical tool. If a criminal just deletes an entire log file, the absence of logs immediately triggers a massive security alert.
Right, the SOC says, why are there no logs for this server?
Exactly. MAESTRO is far more elegant. It likely manipulates the event logging service in memory, selectively plucking out the specific event IDs and telemetry data related to its own execution, while leaving the rest of the normal background noise intact.
That is incredibly stealthy.
It is. The forensic analysts are left looking at a log file that appears completely normal, entirely unaware that the critical evidence was surgically excised moments after the breach.
And the payload it leaves behind is VSOCKpuppet. The intelligence focuses heavily on this backdoor because of how it communicates. Usually, if a system is infected, the security team catches it when the malware tries to phone home to the attacker over the internet, right?
That is the standard paradigm of network defense. You build a strong perimeter, you deploy firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, and network taps to monitor all traffic leaving the environment.
Right, you watch the doors.
You watch the doors. If a server suddenly initiates an encrypted connection to a known malicious IP address in a foreign country, the perimeter security blocks the connection and fires an alert.
But VSOCKpuppet bypasses the perimeter entirely. The report states it communicates directly between the compromised virtual machine and the host server, never touching the external network. How does that physically work?
It exploits the internal architecture of virtualization. VMware has a feature called the Virtual Machine Communication Interface, or VMCI. Right. It's designed to allow fast, efficient communication between the guest and the host without routing packets through a standard emulated network card. VSOCKpuppet hijacks this internal backplane. It establishes a covert channel entirely within the memory space of the hypervisor.
So the malicious traffic isn't traveling on the roads the security team is watching. It's using a secret subway system built into the foundation of the building.
Exactly. The network-based intrusion detection systems are completely blind to it because the data packets never hit the physical switch.
They never see the light of day.
Never. An attacker can use this covert VMCI channel to send commands to the backdoor, extract data from the guest VM, and maneuver laterally, all while the network telemetry reports 0 anomalous outbound connections. It renders traditional perimeter defense models completely obsolete.
That brings us to the crux of the issue, the trickle-down threat. We have this hyper-advanced zero-day VM escape with internal VMCI communication backdoors, clearly built by a nation-state. But the reality we face today is that ransomware gangs are using it. How do these tools migrate from intelligence agencies to common criminals?
It is the inevitable life cycle of digital weaponry. A physical weapon like a stealth bomber requires massive manufacturing infrastructure to replicate.
You can't just download a jet.
You can't. The cyber weapon is just data. It can be duplicated infinitely at zero cost.
And the intelligence outlines the pipeline. The tools are developed in secret, but eventually they leak. They are exposed during an operation, or a rival intelligence agency steals them, or independent researchers manage to capture the exploit payload in the wild and reverse engineer it.
Once the underlying mechanism of the vulnerability is understood, the barrier to entry collapses. The criminal underground no longer has to spend millions of dollars discovering the zero-day. They just have to adapt the leaked code.
They just copy the homework.
Exactly. We have seen this paradigm repeatedly. Sophisticated exploits developed by government agencies inevitably find their way onto dark web forums, where they are packaged into user-friendly exploitation frameworks and sold to the highest bidder.
And that leads to a terrifying shift in motive. An intelligence agency and a ransomware cartel have completely divergent goals, right?
Entirely divergent. An intelligence agency prizes stealth, persistence, and intelligence gathering. They want to remain in the network for years, quietly siphoning data.
Like the 12-month dwell time we talked about?
Yes. They engineer tools like Maestro and VSOCKpuppet specifically to avoid detection and maintain a low profile.
But the ransomware gangs don't care about a low profile. They want to get paid.
The modern ransomware as a service model is built on extortion and disruption. Their goal is to breach the network, steal the data for double extortion leverage, and then loudly and catastrophically encrypt the entire infrastructure.
The intelligence uses a brilliant metaphor for this. It describes a highly precise spy scalpel being repurposed into a blunt criminal sledgehammer.
It is a devastating combination. You have the access capabilities of a top-tier intelligence agency paired with the destructive intent of an extortion racket.
It's the worst of both worlds.
It really is. The ransomware operators use the scalpel to silently bypass all defenses and gain absolute ring zero control of the ESXi hypervisors. Then, they drop the sledgehammer, encrypting every single virtual machine in the environment simultaneously.
This is why an attack vector designed for geopolitical espionage directly threatens the operational stability of a regional hospital, a logistics firm, or a school district. Once the tools leak, the threat environment democratizes. Your infrastructure is now facing weapons designed to penetrate the most secure networks on Earth.
The trickle-down effect elevates the baseline capability of every threat actor on the board. Defenders are no longer just fighting script kiddies. They are defending against state-grade exploits commoditized for mass deployment.
Let's pull all this intelligence together. We've covered the architecture of the hypervisor, the complexity of the exploit chain, and the transition from state secrets to criminal commodities. Here are the three most important takeaways from this deep dive.
The bottom line.
First, the immediate threat. This VMware ESXi 0-day is not a drill. It is actively being exploited in the wild by ransomware operators right now. If your infrastructure relies on ESXi, patching and mitigation are critical, immediate requirements.
The waiver of proactive defense has closed. Organizations must operate under the assumption that threat actors are actively scanning their perimeters for this specific exposure today.
Second, the invisible mechanics. This attack demonstrates a masterclass in stealth evasion. By utilizing the MAESTRO orchestrator and the VSOCKpuppet backdoor to communicate via internal hypervisor channels, the attackers completely bypass traditional network-based perimeter security.
This necessitates a fundamental shift in defensive architecture. Relying solely on network traffic analysis is insufficient. Organizations need deep hypervisor-level telemetry and assume breach methodologies to detect these internal covert channels.
Third, the trickle-down effect. The life cycle of cyber weapons guarantees that elite nation-state tools will inevitably fall into the hands of financially motivated criminals. We are witnessing surgical espionage tools being wielded as blunt instruments for mass ransomware deployment.
The democratization of advanced exploits means the threat landscape will only become more hostile. The sophistication of everyday attacks will continue to scale alongside the development of state-sponsored arsenals.
Which brings us to a highly provocative final thought to leave you with. We know this exploit was operating secretly in the wild for over a year before it was finally caught by the forensics team at Huntress. The question you have to ask yourself is, how many other devastating nation-state level 0 days are actively dwelling inside global infrastructure right now, just waiting in the shadows of the digital arms race?
The capabilities we dissect today are just the ones that have surfaced. The most effective cyber weapons are the ones currently operating with complete impunity, entirely unknown to the defensive community.
It definitely forces a reevaluation of how much we trust our foundational infrastructure. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. To stay ahead of these evolving threats and to keep cutting through the noise, make sure you check out the Tech News TLDR YouTube channel for our daily video updates. Keep your systems patched, assume breach, and we will catch you on the next one.